Hello, today we're going to paint some cyclamens in watercolour, easy to follow step by step, and we're going to splash some paint, spray with some water, mix some luscious colours, and all the materials are listed in the information section under the video. Cyclamens have the most wonderful shapes, lots of positive and negative shapes in the image that I'm painting from here. You can download the image and keep it next to you while you're painting if you like. I love the shape of the leaves, the contrast of the warm and cool colours. Not really keen on the pot, so I won't actually use that shape of the pot because I think it's kind of goes against the shapes of the flowers and the foliage. I will use, and there's lots of variations in the tones, from very pale to very dark, light to strong, and with the leaves there's lots of warm and cool greens. So the first tip is mix your colours very strong before splattering. Thick creamy consistency is the best because we're going to spray with water and that will dilute the colour. So if the colour's not really strong to start with, it will just fade with the water. So I've used here some permanent rose in Holbein, and I've also used Quinacridone Red. For my green, which is really strong, I've used Indigo and Quinacridone Gold, which will give you a fantastic, really cool, very dark green. So this is my spray bottle, just an ordinary spray bottle, but please hold it about 6 inches, 30 centimetres from your paper, and use a spray bottle, not a mister. Misters are designed to keep your paper damp, and I want to produce big drops of water that will move the pigment over the surface of the paper. So to press the trigger gently and slowly to get large drops. If you just squirt away, you'll just wash all the paint off your paper and you won't be happy. And we like happy artists. We don't want you to be unhappy. So don't worry too much about really aiming for anything other than to have some light and dark with your pigment. You want lots of gaps between your colour. You want dry areas of white paper. If it's all wet, all the colour will merge and again, you won't be happy, and I want you to be happy. So try just spraying just enough water. You can do this experiment on lots of little pieces of paper. You don't have to experiment on your final masterpiece. So just aim to have probably more white paper than coloured paper, and then this is tip 3. It's the really hard part. Just leave it to dry naturally. Don't be tempted to fiddle with anything. It will work if you let the water do its thing. Magic stuff will happen. Have patience. Using a hairdryer will only blow the droplets around and spoil the show. Leave it to dry naturally. Maybe it's time for a cup of tea or coffee or phone a friend. But if you fiddle, as you're always tempted to do, it will spoil it. Maybe even do the same exercise again while you're waiting for this to dry, because I can't stress enough how important it is to leave it to dry naturally on a flat surface. It will have fantastic effects, as you'll see in just a moment. The water will produce things that you can't produce with your brush. So this is mine, and I've let it dry. You can see how the pink has actually flowed together quite a lot, probably more than I would have liked, but I'll proceed with this one. And we've got wonderful cauliflowers have formed down the bottom of the paper. That's those areas of very light pigment with very sharp edges around. So they can be turned into leaves or the edges of the bowl or the pot that your cyclamens are in. And some of the pink has gone down into the green, and you can see, like looking at it, that the blue has separated out, the indigo is separated out from the rest of where the leaf area will be. So start using your paint, again very thick paint, very thick pigment, because you want to be able to drag that thick pigment out with lots of water on your brush. And if it's very very pale pigment, that flower will fade when it's dry. So use the water to drag it back down toward the pigment and also to get the pigment to flow up to fill in the shape of that flower. Soften some edges, so I'm not going to paint, those particular cyclamens have the very white edges. I'm not going to paint the white edges because I haven't left enough white in the background, enough plain paper, so it will just make the job too difficult. So I have pre-drawn these flowers. You can't actually see them clearly probably now, but they're very faint under there, so I'm just putting in extremely thick Quinacridone Red and permanent rose to get that cool red, and I'm just doing random flowers that I will gradually fill in the shapes, fill in the mass of floral petals step by step. And it's really important to have some of your pigments warm and some of them cool. Even though cyclamens in this particular pot are quite cool, you've got to have some warm areas within those petals. Otherwise it will look very cold and it will look lifeless because you won't have the three-dimensional look. Warm colours come towards you and the cool colours recede. So you don't have to stick slavishly to your original drawing. You might think you want to put one of the cyclamen flowers somewhere where you haven't got the drawing. That won't matter. So long as you stick to an interesting composition, it will work for you. So I'm just going to add some stems. I've painted them in very dark green, but I'm also going to add some pink to them and just connect the two together, and the pink will run into the green and vice versa. And although they are very, very dark at the moment, they're not too dark because I'll be doing more things in that area to combine the flowers to the leaves, just to stop them looking too disconnected. Now don't forget to have an interesting mix of tones. Light and dark in your pinks and greens, and warm and cool in the pinks and the greens for impact. A lot of florals and paintings in general fail if the darks are not dark enough and the tonal values are too similar. So a good trick is to have 1/3 dark and 2/3 light, or vice versa, and that way you will have lots of interesting contrasts in your work. Otherwise it will look flat if you don't have that interesting mix of light and dark. And to get the underneath leaves to recede, paint them in a cooler, darker green. And for the ones on top, you can add, I've just added Quinacridone Gold to my green mix of Indigo and Quinacridone Gold. You can just add more Quinacridone Gold to warm it up. And don't rush this, just enjoy your painting time. You can stop the video at any stage and you can catch up. And just have a go. Even if you do 1 or 2 flowers, you don't have to try a whole painting at this stage if you're not confident with tackling the whole painting. Just try painting a couple of flowers in this sort of method and see how you go. I think painting with splashing the paper first with paint and then with water, it frees you up and it stops you from getting too tight. Botanical paintings are truly in a class of their own and they're really beautiful and magnificent, but this is more about painting what you see, having fun and not sticking too slavishly to the object or the flowers that are in front of you. And you can see here I've added some pink to the leaves. So that's to combine the two. If you keep in a painting, it looks great in a photograph, if you have obviously the pink flowers and then the green leaves. But if you're doing a painting, you're actually looking for something more. You want it to be more of like an artistic expression of what you're looking at, the image that you're looking at, the object that you're looking at. So all these wonderful variations in the tone and colour, they're not in the real image. But if you can make your painting more exciting than what you're looking at, I think it certainly gives the work another dimension. And it gives you wonderful freedom just to play around and see what you like doing and what suits your style, what suits your method of painting, because no two artists will paint the same. You can see how those stems, now that they're dry, have really, really faded from the very dark pigment because I used a lot of water and thick paint. If you use a lot of water, the water will sink into the paper and leave the pigment behind. So if you use less water and more pigment, it will tend to sit on the surface of the paint and the painting a lot more. So just to free up that base, I'm not really sure how I'm going to finish that at this stage. I'm just going to splash some green down there because I'm kind of stuck at this stage how to finish that off. It'll come to me. I'll just let it unfold and see what happens. And often if you splash on, a pristine sheet of paper like this, you get fantastic things happening that you wouldn't if you sort of slavishly tried to follow the image in front of you. I'm going to put some pink in there, and some pink has splashed up to the top of the paper, so I'll add some more pink up there. It just adds, I think, a little bit of freedom to the painting, a little bit of life, and a little bit of joy, a little bit of craziness. So I had sprayed that with water, and you can see how the pink now has replicated. Maybe there could be a couple of petals that have come down underneath those leaves. The pink has gone into the green, which makes a nice combination, and it acts to draw the painting together, and also repeating the colours that you've used in one area and then repeating those in another area gives your painting a kind of uniformity without being boring, and it just serves to hold it all together, I think. So I'm just going to put a little bit of definition into the outline of some of those petals with my rigger brush. And this rigger brush holds loads of pigment, and it can give you the most exquisite, really, really fine lines. Oh, that's a bit dark, but I can fix that later. Rigger brushes were originally invented to paint rigging on the ships, the old sailing ships, so that rigger brushes have been around for a long, long time. And these particular brushes are the best that I have found. They've got a very springy, natural bristle brush. The hairs in them are natural bristle, and they're very springy, and they hold a lot of water, and they're just over an inch long. So with a fantastic fine point. You could paint hairs on your cat with these. They are so fine. So you have to find, I think, too, which brushes suit you, which brushes you enjoy painting with, and what suits one artist won't suit another. But it's really important to have, first of all, really good paints, and then have really good paper and really good brushes. I'll just soften that one. And these brushes, if you want them, both of these brushes are available through my website. I don't have images of them, but if you want to find out information about them, just contact me through the contact page on my website. So down below the leaves, I really like how that vase has turned out. It's cauliflowered in from the sides with just adding water, and I think it's just about finished now. I don't think I need to do any more to that. So now I'll show you the finished project. Okay, so I've got light and dark in the flowers. There's cool in the background, warm in the foreground, and the same in the vase. I've got warm and cool textures and really meaningless areas of colour, but it's the texture, I think, that makes the pot, and the leaves have worked a treat. So I've got that cool look of the cyclamen leaves and warm at the sides, and there is variation in texture and tone in the centre. So thanks so much for watching. Please